Hazel Shaw. Miss Shaw has been in the county for a good long while, though I understand you were not born here, Miss Shaw.
I was born in Trigg County.
Would you mind telling us how old you are?
I was born in 1901. I was 83 years old, the 3rd day of December.
And what part of Trigg County were you born in?
About 6 miles south of Golden Pond on Cumberland River Farm.
Oh, that's not too far from Marshall County.
No, not too far.
Do I understand correctly that you were a school teacher?
Yes, sir. I taught, or at least I tried to teach for 45 years.
Well, that's good. We'll get back into that a little bit later. But before we do, tell us your father's name.
My father's name was Thomas J. Shaw.
And your mother?
Ann Ross Shaw. They were both born in Trigg County. But their ancestors came from Tennessee. The Rosses came from Tennessee, and so did the Shaws from Stewart County.
Well, someone told me that you were interested in genealogy.
Yes, sir. I've been working on it. I retired in 1966, and I guess I've been living here for 10 years. I guess for the last 12 years or more, that's just about all I've done. Can't get away from it.
Well, tell us a little more about what you discovered about your earlier family than your mother and father. Do you know?
Well, the Ross family came from Scotland, came to Virginia, and from Virginia over to North Carolina and settled on the Roanoke River. William Ross had lived there during the Revolutionary War, and he had 3 sons that fought in the Revolution. After the war was over, he was just a poor man. He'd lost all of his trade. And 4 of his sons migrated westward. 3 of them came to Stewart County, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And John Ross, my ancestor, came to Tennessee about 1812, and he died about 1840. And his son Kenneth came to Trigg County, settled over just beyond Agnes Ferry Bridge upon the hill over there in sometime after 1840. Mm-hmm. And there's where then his family, I've forgotten how many children he had, 4 or 5, but then my grandfather was a grandson of Kenneth Ross, and he was a Baptist minister, mm-hmm. ordained in 1868. And there's several teachers in the family.
Well, you really know your family. It's almost like visiting with them.
I think a lot of my family. They tell me that I knew a lot about them, but not as much. If I'd asked my grandfather questions before he died, I'd have known a lot more. But mm-hmm. I didn't, and I've had to search for them.
So many of us were not as wise when we were young as we could have been.
No, not as wise. And my grandfather the Shaws came to Virginia, from Virginia to Stewart County, Tennessee. And his great-grandfather was born in 1795. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather, Newton Shaw, came to Trigg County about he married in about 1844, and he came about 1845, mm-hmm. and that lived there the rest of his life. And another ancestor, I'm related, the Future family. Did you ever hear of the Future family?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, my grandmother Ross was Future family, descendant from Nathan Future, one of the first settlers in Trigg County.
Before I forget it, I'd just like to say that the building that was right across the street but burned a few years ago, the high school here, was where I was graduated in 1940, and there was a girl from Trigg County in that class. I believe the high school at Golden Pond didn't operate in 40. I think 39 was its last year.
It consolidated with Cadiz.
Uh-huh.
Of Trigg County.
This girl's name was Well,
I believe you told me last night, Rose Dunnigan.
Rose Dunnigan, that's who it was, and I suddenly couldn't think of her name. I believe Rose is now deceased. Someone told me.
I don't know. I have her picture in that book right there. When
But
she was
you
young.
did know Rose Dunnigan.
I knew her father better than I knew Rose.
Hmm.
See, I'm a lot older than Rose,
Oh, yes.
and she was. I began teaching in 21. Years before she ever started school. But I did know. Now, Grundy Holland taught Golden Pond. You knew him, didn't
Oh,
you?
I certainly did. He was my principal here at the high school and
Well, I've known
debate
Grundy.
coach.
Well, we're kind of related. Grundy's mother and my grandmother were stepsisters.
Hmm.
We've known that Holland family all the years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes,
Oh, Grundy Holland was one of my favorites. In fact,
he was a good teacher.
yes, he was, and he did a lot of things for people. Now, I wanted to take typing so desperately. Well, they didn't teach typing here. It's a very small high school. They only had 3 teachers in the upper grades, and so that man took money out of his own pocket and went and bought a brand new Royal typewriter and a typing book. And of course, typing, you know, is largely self-taught anyway. So he put that in the office, and he said, now you can help me with some of the correspondence. He had an awful lot of work to do. At one time, he coached basketball and was principal and taught about 5 classes on top of that.
I always thought that Grundy was a wonderful person. I knew them before they ever moved. They moved from Trigg County in 1912. And then he went back and taught in a rural school in 1916, I believe. And then he came to Golden Pond. Now, Frey or Miss Holland has told me they went over there in 29, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
But I know he was teaching there about in the early 30s because they had school fairs.
Let me ask you about one other person, then we'll get on to some other things. But the boy didn't go to school at Hardin. I think he went to Alamo. But his name was William B. Miller, and he played baseball here against Hardin teams and was a friend of a lot of people around, and later became superintendent of schools in Callaway County.
I knew his mother and father.
Yeah.
Bernie Miller and Bill was born and reared at Golden Pond.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Bernie moved to Murray, well, he worked at Murray, but I guess he lived just between Murray and Alamo, I imagine. Well, I liked Lula, his mother. Mm-hmm. And I saw Bill a few years ago, and I wanted some family history. And I said, Bill, I want you to look up some family history for me. And the next time I saw him, he said, well, I've run into some stumps. I said, yes, we'll run into stumps if you go to looking for history. And he said, he'd tell me our family's related to the Indians. I said, that's not a thing to be ashamed of. So, and he didn't never tell me anything. He never did come up with anything about his family history. I have a lot on the Millers. I've worked on the Millers.
Uh-huh.
And his family. I knew his grandfather, Mr. June Miller.
Will Rogers was related to the Indians and very proud of it, wasn't he?
Well, I said, there's not a thing to be ashamed of. He just laughed. Well, I don't doubt that they probably were, because most of them were real dark. His father was dark-skinned. Mm-hmm. But now, I remember I knew Bill's grandfather because census enumerator in 1940. I remember going to his home. He was an old man at that time. Mm-hmm. See, I've done many different type of things besides teach.
I started to say, you've done a little bit of everything, haven't you?
I've done a little bit of everything but housework and things like that, and I didn't care for that. Anywhere that I could work to make an honest dollar, I did so.
Was your dad a farmer?
Yes, he was a farmer.
So let me ask you if you ever suckered any tobacco.
Very little, because I didn't like it. Mm-hmm. We first, until I was 12 years old, he didn't have any land that would produce good tobacco. He bought a farm on Cumberland River that had never been cleared, bought the land, and he cleared that and made a farm, his river bottom land. And then in 1912, he traded for a larger farm, had some land and he grew some tobacco, but very little tobacco, mostly corn. And he shipped corn to Nashville, put it in burlap bags. And
Were you near Canton?
no, we were just about, on the last place we lived, about 8 miles south of Canton. Have you ever been over between the lakes and driving around? Forge Creek, you ever remember coming to play?
Well, yes, I have driven through there from Kentucky Dam all the way into Tennessee.
Well, you went up the trace. You didn't go.
No.
Now, on Forge Creek, that's where my great-great-grandfather Nathan Future settled. Our father bought a farm just where Forge Creek emptied into the Cumberland River, and we still owned that when Barker Lake was flooded. And but I'd been away for a long time, for several years, because it was hard for me to get in and out to schools, and so I had an opportunity to go to Sumner County, Tennessee, and I left Tree County 3 years, and I couldn't stay away any longer and hold my retirement, and I had to come back.
You know, I just read an interesting article. I believe it was in the Filson Club Journal. I read so many I forget for certain. It was either that or the Kentucky Historical Society about the boats that ran
Dakota River?
up and down the river. Seemed like it said from Canton to Linton or some such place.
They went all the way from up Ohio
Up to-
River up to far Nashville, and I don't know how much farther. Now, in the summertime, the river would be so low they couldn't run. They had to stop. Now, Cumberland River would be so low sometimes boys could wade. But when the river was not down, when it was high enough, we depended on the rivers. That was our lifeline. All the groceries and things were shipped in there, and furniture and what people needed was shipped in on those boats.
And this told about they carried passengers, they delivered groceries and all sorts of things. They even carried the mail.
Now, there's a mail boat that went from Lennon. Lennon is about, if you've never been over there, Lennon is up the river, I'd say, about 14 miles from Canton. When we moved, 1912, we were near Lennon than we were at Canton. And there was a mail boat, carried the boat that carried the mail from Lennon, Kentucky, to Dover, Tennessee, and on to Cumberland City, Tennessee. Now, I remember reading something about that. Somebody wrote and asking me questions about that, but I didn't know enough about it to give them information. I knew there was a boat for years that ran there.
There's a very good article in this quarter's issue of Filson Club, published in Louisville.
Well, I don't get that. And now somebody was working on that, and they wanted information. Now, you remember Judy Muffins lived up here. She wrote articles to the paper.
Oh, yes, she had a lot of fine articles in the Ledger and Times.
Yes, Judy, I worked with Judy, and I wrote some of the things that she printed. If she was busy and she didn't have time, some of the things I wrote, she printed them, but she was good now. And I helped her with the cemetery books, and somebody wrote to her and asked her, and then she came to me. She'd call me to find out what I knew about it, but I didn't know enough about that boat to do anything about it.
Tragic death that we lost. her.
Tragic death.
Yeah.
And the part that was bad for me, we'd planned and we were working on a history of the land between the lakes. And I had quite a bit of it done. Part of it I couldn't type. I could gather information. She'd type it. I had quite a bit written that's never been typed. And after her death, I couldn't finish it because I'm almost blind, and I couldn't pay the price for typing and printing. It's just too much for me.
Have you seen this Milton Henry book?
I didn't have one of them. One's
Well,
right.
there it is, right there on the
See, I've got just about everything in Creek County, Stewart County. Right
Yeah.
there it is. That's
Well,
good.
I own that. I read it through. Of course, I don't remember all of it, but it was very interesting to me.
And it's just that part of it. He didn't contact people between Model, Tennessee, and Golden Pond. That's where we live, over on the Cumberland River. I didn't see him. It was a good book. It was a good book, all right. A lot of facts in there.
Now, what did you taught elementary school?
I taught
Do you remember the names of any of those schools? Did you
I
ever
remember every one of them, and I remember the year that I taught.
Well, it would be interesting just to,
First year I taught in 1921. I didn't begin at the first year. I began in September and finished the school, 6-month school at Ross, just near Cumberland River, just south of Cannon, near Lockee, if you ever heard of Lockee.
Mm-hmm.
And the second year, I taught Larry Furnish, Land Between the Lakes. Next year, in 23, I taught Bethesda, north of Cadiz, off of 139. 19 and 24, of course, the schools then
Started about
started
July.
in July and ended in January. 19 and 24, and ended in January 25. And then in 19 and 25 and ended in January 26, I taught Delmont School out between Lennon and Roaring Spring in Tree County.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 years, 26 and 27, I taught over in the Fort Campbell area. I joined this chapel school.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, I came back and taught the Land Between the Lakes, Pleasant Hill School. That is where I started the school when I was 5 years old. Then in 29 and 30, I went to Upper Dollarson School. It's on the east side of Cumberland River. That's where the Futures first settled, Upper Dollarson Street. Taught there 2 years. Then I came back between my home school, our Furnace, and taught 2 years there, 31 and 32. Then the next 3 years, I went back to Fort Campbell and 3 years. That's the Joiners Chapel.
Yes, sir.
The next 2 and 50, that put me to 36 and 37. I taught Spicing School just the east of Lennon, west of Lennon, in between the lakes. Mm-hmm. In 38, I taught Pleasant Hill School again. That is where I started. And in 39, Larry Furnish was my home school, and I went there and taught until 48, till I went to Gallatin, Tennessee. My mother was old, and I had to be at home with her. Mm-hmm. The board was nice enough that they gave me a place that I could stay at home and see about her and then teach. And I didn't make very much. I didn't make enough to pay my way and pay my board somewhere else, part of those years.
Uh-huh.
You may not know how small the salary was.
Well, I remember that when I was going to Stone over in Callaway County, I had a teacher named Otho Winchester, and he told me once he made $50 a month.
I taught for less than 50.
Mm-hmm.
During the Depression.
When I was at Southern Illinois University, there was a man who ran a little store on campus. He had given the land to the university on the provision that they'd let him run his little store there as long as he lived. Well, he lived to be way on up toward 100, and they kept the promise. They'd always had a place in the building, and he'd run a little store and sell sandwiches and so forth. And he told me about beginning his teaching, and that he just passed an exam at the county superintendent's office when he finished the 8th grade. They gave him a certificate. He had no high school and no college, and he taught for $40 a month. Now, this was Illinois, one of the richest states in the Union. So I guess all the states were somewhat similar.
I did the same thing. I took teacher's examination in 1921, and I didn't have any high school work. I'm not ashamed of it because I didn't have any opportunity to go to high school.
Mm-hmm.
And my certificate I still have my certificate.
Miss Shaw is looking right around for it. Are there any of your relatives living today?
Oh, yes, that's my sister that came. That's all right over here. That's she's Miss Shaw. She's a widow. She married a Shaw. She'd be 90 years old the 12th day of April. And one brother died just the 19th.
So she married a Shaw.
She married a Shaw.
Uh-huh.
And one And one brother just died here. He died in, reason we moved here, he died in 19th day of January. And then we had two more brothers that died, one in 80 and one in 81. One of them lived to be 88. We're just a long life family.
You certainly are. Now, you have taken out a diploma there from Murray State College, I see.
Yes, I decided to go back to school. I had 2 years, and in 50-something, I had an opportunity. I had so many things ahead of me, I couldn't always do what I wanted to do. And I had an opportunity. I didn't have to be at home, and I had an opportunity to go to school, and I believe I started in 53. And in 5 summers, and the correspondence, and going on Saturday, I finished the 2 years, two extra years. Made my 4 years. And on the back, it shows my grade. That's the first one that I ever received.
Well, isn't this something? It says Commonwealth of Kentucky First Grade Elementary Teacher Certificate. Be it known that Hazel Shaw, having filed satisfactory evidence of good moral character and of the required academic and professional work, and having passed the required examination, is hereby awarded this certificate to teach elementary schools of Kentucky, valid for 4 years from this date, August 1, 1921. Well, that is wonderful. And you scored in the 90s. Oh, that is really
Well,
something.
we had to know 8th grade then, didn't you know it?
Well, you probably, she passed, incidentally. I'll just read this off in spelling, reading, writing, arithmetic, grammar, composition, geography, physiology, civics, history, theory and practice, and agriculture. Now, what was theory and practice? Was that teaching methods?
Teaching method. Then when I went to Tennessee in 48, I had enough work to I got a life from Tennessee. But still, I had the life, but I wanted to go on and get my degree. Now, my brother told me, he says, you're crazy. He says, you're not, I was having trouble walking in. I said, well, I'm going. I want to go. And I enjoyed it. I went those summers, 5 straight summers.
Well, this is wonderful too. You had in 1948 a life certificate from Tennessee showing work done at Murray State.
And
then,
Sumner County now was one of the richer counties in Tennessee. Davidson County, I guess, is about the only county in Tennessee that paid more in the summer. I made far more in there than I did in Trigg County.
there's Dr. Woods' signature, and it's dated 8th of August, 1958.
I'd have liked to got it when Dr. Wells was my favorite.
Oh, yes. Well, that would have been way back in the very
I
pioneer
went there
days.
when he was president, though.
Uh-huh.
See, I just go semesters when
When you had the
I
opportunity.
had the money, since I could. Now, that's the main thing about it, when I had the money and could. And so,
Now, how
and I want to show you a very old certificate. That's my father's first wife. She was a teacher.
Trigg County, Kentucky, dated June the 26th, 1886. That does go back. Well, 1885, excuse me, June. That's really something. June 26, 1885, and that one was good for 1 year. I guess they renewed them each year.
The 1 year was called the 3rd grade. The 2nd grade is 2 years, and the 1st grade was 4 years.
And you made the 1st grade.
I made the 1st grade.
Well,
I had an uncle that taught for about 20 years. I reckon I just liked it. When I started, I wanted to go to school. They couldn't keep me at home.
What subject did you like best?
I always liked history. I liked history and math.
All right, now how did you come to Marshall County?
My brother lived here. He lives over on what is Main Street, College Street, just across, almost across from the post office. My sister and I were living at Cannon.
They call that Commerce now.
Commerce instead of College Street. her sister had moved from, the TVA took her home in Stewart County, and she had moved to Canada, and I'd bought a home there after I'd sold my land between the legs. And I was teaching, after they moved, after brother and his wife moved to Callaway County, I stayed on because I had a job there in 5th grade. They moved in 56 to Callaway County, and then later they moved here. And in 66, I retired, and my sister moved to Canada and lived with me. But I couldn't drive, and we didn't have any people there, and we just needed to be near somebody to help us out when we carry us to doctors and get groceries. And so my brother wanted us to move here, and so we bought this first before we sold our property there, and then we sold and moved here. But I enjoyed living at Canton. See, I knew everybody, and here I don't know people. I've not been able to go places.
Yes, sir.
See, I've been using a walker long before I moved here, but still, I guess I'm contented now. I've just stayed with my history and my work, and then we have lots of visitors.
Yeah.
We have people. There's one Dr. Harrell, Dr. Ray Harrell lives in Bartlettsville, Oklahoma. He's been working on his family history. And Docius, he and his wife come 3 times, or I believe they go to some of their people, and he comes by. I've helped him quite a bit. His ancestors were Countyans. And I don't know, we just people from so many different places. We had company from Clarksville, Tuesday. The lady over there helped her with her history. Her ancestors were Countyans, part of it. She was personnel director, and they come often. We have a lot of company, and we enjoy it. So we go very few places, but time passes all right.
Well, you've got a big smile and your face is beaming. I just wish people could see you. You seem to be a very happy person.
Well, I don't have anything to be so unhappy about. I have I'm nothing luxurious, but I have a comfortable place to live. We're here among good people. They're just as nice to us as these people over at the library are so nice to us.
Yeah, you're next door to the library.
Yes, they bring me books, they send me magazines, anything I need from over there, they will bring it to me.
We have about a minute left. Have you got a big story you could tell us? Something that happened to you in your life that'd be
I don't know. I guess school's about I've been all my life, I suppose. I don't remember.
Did you ever have any trouble with discipline?
Yes, I think everybody that taught for years had some trouble, but not a big lot.
Did you ever have to whip a big old boy?
Yes, I've had to do that, but I'm sorry that I did. I'm sorry that happened, but sometimes it didn't seem to could be avoided at that time.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that trouble?
Oh, sometimes they get a little obstreperous, but...
Well, I was at Katie's 10 years, and I didn't have very much trouble there. I wanted 3rd or 4th grade, but the principal would never let me have it. She wanted me to have 5th, and I could take 6th, said you can handle it. And I had very little trouble with them, and I enjoyed them.
Well, I certainly thank you, Hazel Shaw. Nice to visit in your home here in Arden.
I never got around to telling you about the Nathan Future, my ancestor, that one of the first settlers in the land between the lakes, did I?
Well, you mentioned it, but you didn't explain it
Well,
thoroughly.
when he died, he went there in 1820 on Ford's Creek, and he died in 1829. He owned about 1,600 acres of land on that valley. And our great-grandfather then was further down on the next valley down the river, and he owned most of that. So our ancestors played a big part in settling that area.
Well, thank you so much, and many of them came to Marshall County later. Now, this is Ray Mofield. We're returning you to our studios in Benton.